So this whole RV thing for me really started about a year ago, about this time last year. And I want to talk about what my experiences have been like in the last calendar year since leaving Portland, Oregon, some of the places that I visited. And before I start that, I want to take a step back, talk about where some of this stuff started. I left Portland the first time in 2011, took a job in Dallas, Texas. I left behind OTB TV, a TV show that I started in 2005. I felt that it was time to start building a new road in front of me, and I, wanted to live off the grid and in a state of freedom. And I've wanted to get involved in building projects and meet mindful community members, if you will. People that I can get along with, and people that aren't going to go to sleep one night and wake up believing that Alex is the devil. So I've been looking. I guess, for what do you call it, my own family, my real family, if you will. Spiritually, that is, sense of community in my travels. That's why I've traveled to different places. Also feeling what feels right for me to be parked by myself in this RV without infringing on someone else's space, being in front of somebody's house, being in a city, being in a public area. You know, I've been trying to stay away from the urban environment so I can enjoy living in the RV and also enjoy nature at the same time and be out of people's space and not be like breaking the law in any way. And right now is one of those moments where I can rest, take a deep breath, and really embrace the experience. So I want to take a step back. 2011, I left Portland the first time. I was in Dallas for a year. I've talked about that story as well. That was an interesting adventure and job. And then in September of 2012, I came up north, visited a few viewers in Colorado outside the Springs, did a little traveling, went up to Wyoming, found myself in Costilla County, November 17th, 2012. And I want to share this story in longer detail. But that began the beginning of what was nearly a 9-month experience in the yurt with a few breaks here and there, traveling to a few other places, staying in a few other places, and then later on Gunnison, Colorado. But my first experience in Costilla County was one without an RV, with all my stuff packed into a Honda 4-door sedan, 1990 that I bought in Dallas, that actually left out here somewhere 3 years ago on someone's property, so someone's been watching it for me. If I was to get settled long term in the San Luis Valley, I would be able to get that car and get its alignment fixed. It's already in my name. So the first time I came here, I didn't even have the RV, and I was dependent on staying in a yurt. And it seemed that the synchronicity was working during that period for me to meet someone who was watching over the property. That yurt is no longer there, but the owner of the property hasn't been here in a very, very long time. So I was able to experience that. Prior to that, the wild horses had squatted in the yurt, and as well as many other rodents. So a lot of cleaning was done, and I was very fortunate to have that experience. Then I went to some other places, including Kansas City, found myself back in Portland, Oregon in the year 2014, and came back here this time last year in April of 2015. So I was in Portland for 1 calendar year, living in my vehicle, coming back to my hometown without family, but I brought my TV show back. And I'm talking about local things, gentrification on steroids, local corruption, including the city. Talked about the fakeness, the Portlandia TV show, how the city of Portland's really marketed itself as something that it's not. So people ended up arriving in Portland. Now there's a housing crisis. So many people were told to move to Portland to boost the real estate market. Well, it got boosted in more than a few ways. I mean, some places can only dream of having the real estate boost that Portland, Oregon did. And so the locals are affected, taxes go up, property goes up. So the people in position of power, people that, are in the business of charging higher rents, they're making a killing off of this Portlandia enterprise. while others are suffering. You have homeless moving in and also people living there that have lived there for years and worked for years becoming homeless. And I've talked about the gender discrimination, and it is real. It is very real. So when I came back to Colorado, it was April of 2015. And short story before we begin, I had a homemade teardrop camper that a friend helped me build. And, teardrop campers are not cheap. This was homemade, and this was done with materials that were made through a day labor situation. And so starting out with a trailer, Harbor Freight trailer, for $300, $350, one of the better ones that they have, the more sturdier, 1,750-pound capacity Harbor Freight trailer, and then getting the brand new plywood from there. Although if I can go back and do it again, go with used plywood and maybe a slightly different design. But it was thrown together in about a month. Now, I also have talked about my complications with certain people that I've accepted their help, and this was one of those situations. One of many situations where I've accepted somebody's help, and I've asked myself whether it would have been better if I had not accepted their help. And in that situation, the teardrop camper, to be brief, did enable me to have somewhat of a shelter without being completely homeless. And I was doing my TV show during this time period and going to the gym and trying to travel outside the city when I could. And then, starting earlier in this year, or in the year of 2015, started posting for amtvmedia.com, which added a few dollars to my pocket, which really changed my situation. And it was only a few months after that started that I got the RV. And the donations came in from a viewer on the East Coast for the RV. And this was occurring right around the time that I got into a brief accident. I made the decision that I was going to try to pull my little Toyota, pulling my teardrop camper out of Oregon and into Colorado. And in hindsight, that would have been a bad situation. Going over those mountain passes, I don't know if that little truck would have been able to really pull that trailer. And it did not have the stopping power one day when it started raining on MLK. And the truck slid. The trailer behind it, I believe, pushed the truck forward. And there was some light damage done to the vehicle in front of me. I had insurance at the time. It was no big deal. Nobody was injured, but I was freaking out that my only vehicle, had its front smashed up. Now, the vehicle, I gave it away along with the teardrop camper once I got the RV. And I found it on Craigslist for $3,000. And everything happened, boom, boom, boom. I had some time to get it put in my name. Now it's in my name here in the state of Colorado. I got AAA and insurance right away after I purchased the RV. I think it was like $145, $150 for the whole year. So for the first time in my life, I paid for the insurance for a whole year. Now, it was later for me to get the solar panels mounted at the top. For the short term, I was getting friends to help me with the basic wiring. And it was, an older way of doing the solar panels, which I don't recommend, which is just laying them down or something. If you're coming to an area like Colorado and there's heavy winds, once you go through maybe 4 or 5 solar panels and they've all been lifted up by the wind and dropped and shattered, that's when you realize the importance of having the stuff mounted down, which my solar panels are now. They are now mounted down. But I've actually had to learn that mistake and relearn that mistake multiple times, not just several years ago when I bought, some 15-watt solar panels for $15 each, which helped me charge my computer at that time. I also lost a 100-watt solar panel that I bought over the course of this summer after arriving in Colorado and visiting a friend. So going back to arriving in Colorado or coming here, I passed through Idaho and visited a viewer and his family, and that was a positive experience in the area around Emmett, Idaho. And continuing on, visited someone else in Utah, in Logan, Utah, and that was an interesting experience, fun experience, meeting someone along the road from social media. And then found myself in Colorado. going back to maybe April something, late April of 2015, going from Grand Junction to Gunnison, the shock of being back in Colorado, being tired from the road, working my way all the way back to Monte Vista, to Alamosa, to buying some shovels and going out on a piece of property that I was told by a close friend that I could stay on in Costilla County, right outside of San Luis. And I stayed there a night after digging out an area where I can drive up in, and I just decided that it was too soon. And I didn't have internet out there. I didn't know about Viero at the time. And so I revisited a female friend in Trinidad, even though I knew better, having visited this friend 2 years earlier and seeing the drama then and the mood swings and the pharmaceutical addiction, and you can even say the sexual harassment. I was more in a situation or in a state of mind of let's just be friends and I'll pay a little bit of the rent. And this last time around, I was able to do that, and I did do that for several months. And so there was a little bit of stability that I really needed coming here from Oregon after spending so much time in a teardrop camper, after driving cross country. Going straight off the grid in Costilla County in April of 2015 was not for me. And so even though I knew this person had some mental disturbances, you know what? A female, something the closest to family, as sad as that was, because this person did have some serious issues. I really had nowhere to go. And I liked the idea of going somewhere that was familiar. And the rent for the apartment was $325, so me putting down $200 is, nearly 2/3. And she was out of work at the time, so it was good for her to have me helping out on the rent. And I prefer to sleep in my RV alone or on the floor in the living room. But there was some real reservations about her sanity, though, about things that happened before, and concern that she would repeat the same behavior that some people exhibit when they go off their meds. So that situation did inevitably happen, but there was some period of peace. Again, staying in Trinidad, coming back to Colorado, getting my regrounding, doing my quinoa test garden, first ever, which I filmed on this channel, going up to the, a hiking area in Trinidad with the vehicle, the house vehicle. And then one day I drove to the store and was pulled over by the police, and I was not told when driving her vehicle, I was not told by her that she did not have car insurance. And during that whole month, there was some unnecessary arguing with her saying that she did have insurance when she did not have insurance. So when the court date came up, she never came to court with the proof of insurance, and I got hit with a $650 ticket. And so, I took that as a sign that I maybe shouldn't have been there to begin with, that I should have learned from last time. So I saw a trade-off. Okay, you basically paid this much for the rent and then gave her $200 or $300 when I was able for some car repairs, and then I get hit with a $650 ticket because someone else didn't have insurance. So I basically then, at that point, headed Costilla County. So I visited a small little community called 360 Freedom, and the person reached out on YouTube, and I thank him for reaching out on YouTube. And I also told him that some of the people on his property were, the idea of community and people getting along, there were some elements that were missing. And basically felt like moving on and not staying. And we're talking about really minor personality differences. But I then went on to look at another property and was given permission by a certain land dealer that has been holding land in Costilla County. And I was in talks with him to buy to purchase 5 acres by the river for $2,400, $1,000 down. So I stayed on his property to check it out, and we were about to start the paperwork because there was a reason that I actually had satellite internet and a post put on the property. At that point, I had the money to invest the $500 charge in HughesNet, and that's about what they charge for them to come out and install that and actually bring you the dish. Because my credit wasn't so good, and I thought that this was going to be the spot, I literally purchased a satellite dish for $500. I also made other purchases like a raft and a greenhouse and other things that I was not able to keep carrying with me in this RV that I've left at different places along the way, including a computer. So there's certain things, along with a host of other small items, including a power drill charger, Ryoko or Ryobi, a Ryobi charger. Um, this is unfortunate, but they are just physical items. Just like the money was just money, spending nearly all of my money on the transmission to get that repaired. And so now I'm parked, just sitting here, keeping my peace, holding my peace, and just recounting this last year and everything that I've been through up until this point. So my goal there in August of September 2015 was to hopefully start the process of sandbags. And of course, I was thinking really, really fast. I didn't know all the stuff was going to happen with the county. I had no knowledge of it. I thought I was going to stay on that property, put a sandbag home, and somehow get a permit from the county and be able to do this, live in my RV while building this earthship. Or at least getting the property in my name and living in the RV over the winter. I thought that this was the land of freedom where RVs can come and live. I was completely unaware that there had been a change in 2013 to the land use code. So through 360 Freedom, I believe that I made contact with Chloe and Hiram. And I needed some help with my solar panels and some wiring at that time. And I had not yet gotten the great ones that I have at the moment. It was still, properly wiring that 100-watt one that you can actually find on eBay for $100, or a little bit more than that. Later on, it broke and cracked, but I actually remember going over to Hiram's to get help with that. And just that community feel, we're using my chainsaw at the time, and he's cutting up wood, and it's just like a small little ritual. I'm getting to know people off the grid, and all this stuff hadn't really started yet. And then Chloe adds me on Facebook, and I'm out there with the satellite dish, doing my whole, this is the spot, and I thought at the time that was going to be the spot. And so we got to talking in person about these rumors about the land use code. And the rest is history. The rest is history from that point on. From that point on, in late August to September, right in that window, and the days leading up to the 9th of September, I reparked my RV at Chloe and Hiram's house and leave my satellite dish behind, and later go through the whole thing of returning it and realizing that they're keeping the 300 and only kicking me back 200. HughesNet really ripped me on that. Installation fee. So only get HughesNet if you really, really, really need it. So, the rest is history and can be read about. There's an article by thelastbastel.com. I believe his name is Kyle, who's the author, and he really summarized in words a lot of the San Luis Valley drama. But it really started with the Planning Commission of the 9th of September 2015. We have my Costilla County playlist. So I went from being by myself, looking at 5 acres for $2,400, to about to make the payment, to Chloe contacting me, us flyering throughout the whole thing, and my focus going to this issue. Stayed at Daryl Carter's. Then that issue happened to where he was removed from his property. There was also the cleanup crew, the community coming together. I'm going to upload that video later, where we go to Neil and Penny Taylor's address, where their property was in Costilla County, across from Tim Leggett, and we're getting their property, their items, the things labeled trash and rubbish, off their property so they don't go to jail. Because Tim Leggett, whose LinkedIn page says he works for BP, he sued them for violating the land use code, saying they had trash on their property and basically blocking his beautiful view of Blanca. And so we have Costilla County siding with a wealthy newcomer from the state of Texas by the name of Tim Leggett, whose profile says he just so happens to work for British Petroleum. The travels from Daryl's point on included Alamosa, and this is really what I want to summarize. Oh, to go back a step, there was a period. There was a period after leaving 360 Freedom, after I first got to Costilla County, where I went up to other towns in the San Luis Valley, towns like Montrose, towns like Salida. I even went to Crestone at one point, checking out some of those areas, wanting to make sure that I wasn't making a mistake, putting a lot of energy and time into Southern Colorado. It's not the first time that I've done that. And maybe there's a reason why we travel in certain directions, be it clockwise or counterclockwise, to see certain areas. And so that was the first time that I really went up to the northern part of the San Luis Valley and kind of did a turnaround, and also ended up in Gunnison as well as Montrose to then come back down through Durango, back to Costilla County. Then I find myself in La Vida after leaving Daryl Carter's and parking there in that small mountain town for a little bit over the course of this winter. And then from there, going to the Taos, New Mexico area, and someone randomly invited me to her area in the Ole Caliente area. So I think that was past Thanksgiving, perhaps during Christmas or up until Christmas. I had been parked there. And then, I felt like I wanted to get back on the road during the dead of winter. And then I needed some change and want to be back by myself again, no longer parked at someone's place, dealing with someone's personality. And then I accepted someone's offer, and we talked about this in the last video, a couple in Antonito that had some domestic violence issues between them and other issues. And although it was a place to park, and I was able to plug in for a couple of weeks and get some stuff done in the RV, it was not without its drama. From there, going to Alamosa in the dead of winter, surviving the coldest place in North America during the winter here in Alamosa, going to the gym, 24-hour gym, Valley Health and Fitness, $50 a month, $55 a month, open 24 hours, going to the sauna every day for a couple of weeks at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, getting my core temperature up, sweating, working out, not eating enough, stressed out a lot, still drinking some coffee, but I actually went through my first coffee fast actually during that period. From that point on, I was coming back to this spot just outside of Alamosa, and this was like my second trip up to the northern part of Colorado. As you saw me document, and this is just actually in the last few months, I believe, went up to Nederland, and I went to Old Colorado City, just outside of Manitou Springs. Found myself back in Walsenburg. Went down to Ole Caliente for a little bit. And I've also stayed at, my friend John's place for a little bit, Antonito, and that was positive. And I've stayed briefly in other places that were positive. And it was a positive experience staying with Daryl Carter. Even if we had some philosophical difference of opinion, and, people like him may believe that the Muslims really are invading. And he seemed to be repeating some of the mainstream talking points towards the end, which kind of troubled me and discouraged me because I really thought a lot of his Gnostic knowledge. You can say that throughout this whole ordeal that I have been disappointed trying to build community, coming back to Costilla County, finding some people that are, in a lot of ways, and I'm not talking about Carter, but others, very much influenced by the mainstream media, by mainstream politics, by Babylon, by the grid, in ways that they may not admit, in ways that they may not know. And so me being a unique thinker, having a lot of really unique content on my YouTube channel, and really speaking my mind in person about certain things, I'll talk around a fire about the solar flare influence over the war cycles and really try to, and other things in humanity. I'll talk about China. I'll talk about why I believe Colorado is a safe place. And sometimes I think I'm telling people too much. But you know what? I'm still going to be Alex Ansary. I'm still going to be who I am. And I'm still going to make videos about my travels and about my thoughts wherever I go. So that's actually a lot for people to handle and to expect them to accept someone like me, someone as different as me. And so I'm not here to blame, but reality is reality. I have tried to meet different people and assimilate into different communities. And, well, the fact of the matter is, here I am 1 year later with a lot more experience than what I had this time last year. And I already had my experiences off the grid the first time in 2012, 2013. I saw some people call me a homeless bum then. I saw how people treated me then before I had the RV even. And I just had the car. Why did you come here? We're not talking about the Hispanic locals. We're talking about the white off-gridders that had been here for many years that felt a sense of entitlement that they owned this whole place because they literally were here for 10 years from California, even though this person may have come from San Francisco, that person may have come from LA. And there was actually a number of people that I met out there from these high dense population parts of California. It was interesting how some people feel that entitlement to tell someone else with less, especially if they're just one person, if you don't have money, if you're in poverty, you shouldn't be able to come here in the middle of the desert where some people can die to rest, to kind of reground. And so it made me stronger. And I realized that just because I was living off grid, people weren't necessarily going to respect that. Some people are going to fear that. Some people are going to assume that you're a mooch on society, that you're trying to play the welfare machine or grow marijuana or dump trash or something else, because some people do that shit. It's because some people do that shit in this society, wherever it is. We're in this day and age of judge the guy with the RV, ooh, and this and that. Add in the fact that I have different views on reality. Some people literally go to town trashing my name when they gossip with others. Well, that's their right, and that's the energy that they choose to involve themselves in. That's not on me. And I don't have to be defensive in response to that now that I've seen so many people act like this along the road. I'm not saying everybody, but a fair amount of them. It affects me less. I also realize there are people that hate on other successful people with YouTube channels, and in particular, people that are far more successful. In particular, because they're successful and becoming more successful in reaching people, because they have the confidence to say what's on their mind without being afraid of what other people think. So that's why other people on the internet get attacked as well. It's because they have content. It's because they have information. And ultimately, that's what keeps me going forward. Some people ask, how do I make it through? And I talk about some of the stuff that I do for, gas money and things like that online. Just making the basic ends meet, but it's not enough for me to, buy land, have a septic tank put in. I don't have several $1,000s. I don't have $5,000. I don't have $10,000. If I did, I'd be able to invest that right now, and perhaps in a $1,000 vehicle, maybe a 4x4, to get up into some of those properties. Maybe it can happen later. For now, I'm going to share my story as to how I got to this point, because I found myself collecting myself in the last hour saying, I'm going to move forward in my life from a state of, in a state of peace and focus. Whatever happens, even if I'm I don't want to use the word stuck, even if I choose to remain here in the meantime, park in this general areas around Alamosa, but not in Alamosa, and that's as descriptive as I'll be, not Costilla County. For right now, I feel a need to kind of find peace where I am, because I've done so much traveling, and I'm telling you now all the different places that I've been. So from coming here in Portland in April, just to take a step back and recap, in April of 2015, to going to Trinidad, Colorado after touching base here in Alamosa, to going back to Costilla County, to then going up to Salida, Crestone, Montrose, Gunnison, coming back to Costilla County, that whole war and off-the-grid living, going into the winter and getting kicked out of the county, literally seeing people evicted at places where I was staying. Then there was Chloe and Hiram leaving their property. Then there was Daryl Carter getting kicked off his property. Now it's Thanksgiving, and I go up to La Veta, Colorado, and then I go down to Taos. Like I said, or actually rather northern New Mexico, Ole Caliente area, which is about an hour from Taos. Stay with a female friend, not a girlfriend, but an older woman, and we had some very interesting discussions about the world at large. She's familiar with people like Max Egan, and We Are Change, and other alternative media figures and personalities. Connecting with her on Facebook and seeing, oh, this is a fairly interesting person, to needing to kind of get my own space. Felt a need to be alone again, and ended up, unfortunately, going from a decent situation with a decent lady to a chaotic situation with a couple fighting back and forth. And one of the women, I believe, was suspected of being a horse thief, and she's facing charges in Costilla County. She actually, you know what? It really doesn't matter. To going from there, she was another person that made me remember why I have to be very careful which couples I go and visit, because some of them are highly dysfunctional. And some of the girlfriends and wives will resent the fact that the boyfriend or husband invited me there, because they're concerned that because what they've seen on video, some of my ideas or opinions may influence the boyfriend, or they just simply have a resentment against me for the very views that I've shared. Going from there to another place in Antonito, seeing another few friends, to being on the move again, back in the city of Alamosa, going to the gym, leaving off at that story, 24-hour gym, sauna in the middle of the night, going back and forth between there and another spot, to then going to Del Norte, South Fork. Now we're stepping back a month and a half, kind of seeing all that wealthy development in areas near nature. There's really nowhere for an RV to go and park and not be like flagged right away. Like, what are you doing here? This is private property. So, I've never, squatted like that on private property where there's a house. Never considered it. But there's certain areas where there's no one around for miles, and it's all empty houses. From there, I passed through Pagosa Springs, and that was a real brief experience. Went back down to the Ole Caliente area and watched over a friend's house, got some rest. After not a good experience in Pagosa Springs, offering my services to someone that wanted a volunteer landscape person, but they had an attitude when I needed to use the internet. Knowing right away that I was being used and being viewed basically as a bum, the very fact that I'm willing to do labor for someone, if you're in RV and a single male, it's like automatically if you give them a website or a YouTube channel, they're not going to go to see what kind of person you are. Some of these people will literally profile you as a lower income, desperate person to be taken advantage of if you allow yourself to be taken advantage of. I know that sounds crazy, folks, but that's the programming that some of these would-be slave masters, male and female, have. From going from Ole Caliente, I did some videos, more Archon podcast series related videos there, and then went to Taos, New Mexico, and dealt with that whole hornet's nest of shit. Having never met somebody like Kyle in a long, long time that I thought was like a nice, friendly young man, to seeing him shapeshift his energy, that is, an attitude, into a psychopath. An absolute psychopath. Attacking my camera. One of those situations where I'm having to film someone going through a personality split in fucking front of me. All the while, my transmission blown. After all these travels, after all this winter of being cold with nothing but a Mr. Buddy heater, and go through this whole experience, it's all been about getting to this point where all that money that I was saving, as little as it was, the $600, $700, $800 down payment on a property 3 hours from here. Now back in Alamosa, transmission fixed, still got to get the spark plug wires repaired. All that money spent, no money for land, all this just one circle. Here I am, and the solar cycle is reaching completion. I mean, we're way through the solar max part. It's not like there's an official bell that's rung when we go into the solar minimum, but it's like we're in a whole new cycle, I believe, in time, with where we are in the solar cycle and what this signifies when we've reached that period where we're getting less and less solar flares and going into the descent of the minimum portion. Here we are in 2016, as we've been in the solar max for several years now, at least since 2011, 2012. Money is energy. I've gone through this whole thing, but look at all the experiences that I've had and all the places that I've seen and all these experiences meeting these different off-the-gridders. And also now feeling incredibly cautious about where I go from here. I'm actually going to have to plug this in because the battery is about to die. So the year in review has taught me that there is a beauty that can come from having a sense of community, being able to stop and break bread. And there's also great danger in being dependent on others, as I learned a long time ago, and needing others for help. But at the same time, it's very difficult to go it alone 100%. And obviously, there was help that came in the form of affordable mechanical help, in the form of me being able to find a transmission For under $400, be in the middle of nowhere, it might be a little bit more difficult to get some of those things taken care of, or being without internet, being without this aspect of the grid, the infrastructure, like Facebook. And Facebook was used to contact and come across both those people and many, many other people. So as disruptive as Facebook can be to normal human relationships, it's also allowed synchronicity to be and to occur and to take place. So, I am going to stay here at this location, resetting, and pondering all the different travels that I've experienced in Colorado and northern New Mexico the last year or so, as I try to realign to the best of my ability, realign myself and gravitate towards that place that's right for me beyond where I am now. Until that comes, I'm here now. I'm here now today. I'm here now today in the moment, in this body, here in this environment, in a world where people will call me a homeless bum without realizing the state of consciousness that I'm trying to achieve by overcoming such odds. For now, we'll bring this video to a close. I'm Alex Answer here in Alamosa County, April 3rd, 2016. We'll be back with more.